You're listening to Off the Clock Sports.
Off the Clock Sports.
The weekly show where you'll hear the best insights on all the latest in sports. Here's your host, Brendan Cook.
Brendan Cook.
Alrighty, welcome into the latest edition of Off the Clock Sports. I am Brandon Cook. I got Braedon McNamara with me today. And Braedon, let's just get this out there for all our listeners. Unless Tom Brady signs a contract extension, unless Mike Trout gets traded or LeBron James gets traded, which isn't going to happen, or he retires, we're going to talk strictly about the NHL Trade Deadline. But Braedon, thanks for coming on, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk some NHL hockey. Don't get to talk about it too often. Trade deadline is always a fun time. And the Sens have been real busy today, so I'm excited to talk about a little Sens hockey.
Yeah, so for those of you watching on YouTube, Braedon is sporting an Ottawa Senators St. Patrick's Day hat is what I believe it is.
Yes, it is.
And I have my Zamboni shirt on for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it was quite an opposite day for the two Ontario teams. We'll start there, I guess. Mm-hmm. We'll get to Joe Thornton in a little while. He stood pat. We're going to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights and a couple other teams, but what did you think of the Senators' day today? Obviously, lots of draft picks coming their way. Tyler Ennis is on his way out. Jean-Gabriel Pageau on his way out, and more moves that have happened over the course of Pierre Dorion's tenure as general manager. But what do you think of the job today by Pierre Dorion, getting a first-round pick, a second-round pick, a third, and a fifth-round pick for Jean-Gabriel Pageau and Tyler Ennis?
I give it Pierre Dorion an A+ because but before he traded Pageau, he actually traded Vlad Nemestikov, and he traded Vlad Nemestikov for a fourth-round pick in 2021. So he got a first, a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth all today over 2 years. So I think Pierre Dorion hit a grand slam with the trade of Jean-Gabriel Pageau. The guy has been a second liner at best on Ottawa. I mean, this year, obviously, he's like a first liner, but that's not hard to do on the Ottawa Senators this year. And he was able to get a first round pick, which is top 3 lottery protected. The Islanders might miss the playoffs this year. They're only 2 points up on, I believe, Columbus. And it's very possible they miss the playoffs, and Ottawa would then have 3 lottery potential picks within the top 4. I mean, the Islanders could fall and get the top 4th overall pick. So Ottawa could be sitting very pretty this upcoming draft. Like I said, the first, second, and conditional third for Pageau is insane. I love the trade so much. I hate to see Pageau go, but at the same time, the contract he ended up getting with the Islanders, 6 years, $5 million annual average salary, was just way too much for Pageau, in my opinion. I've watched the guy a bunch. He's always been a 25 to 20 goal scorer. He's getting an opportunity to score more goals this year because he is a number 1 center on this team. But I think that's just very indicative of the situation he's in. He's got a lot of ice time, so he's going to have a chance to put in more goals in the back of the net. He's a proven playoff competitor. He scored 4 goals against the Rangers. He scored a hat trick against the Habs in one playoff series. So the guy's a playoff competitor. So the Islanders are getting a really good player for their playoff push.
So what's the mood around Ottawa today? The last few years, it's been Melnick out. There's been a lot of criticism of Pierre Dorion. What do you think the feeling is with the fan base today, getting all these draft picks? I mean, like you said, 3 first-round picks this upcoming draft. It's unlikely the Islanders pick has too much value this year, because if the Islanders move up in the draft, they can only go into the top 3. So I think that would be the protection. They can't actually go to 4. But the Sharks pick, along with the Ottawa Senators pick, could land anywhere in that top 3. So, I mean, what's the mood now in this rebuild? Because a couple of years ago, it did not look very good. It looked like it was going to be a long road back to the top for the Ottawa Senators. But now as we sit here today, those 2023 to 2026 years kind of look really good right now with a very loaded draft class coming up in June.
Mm-hmm. Everyone, on Sens Twitter right now, I think people are pretty well, I want to say content with how everything's panned out. People are sad to see Pageau go, obviously, but The return Pierre Dorion was able to get for Pajot was exceptional. So people are pretty happy about that. They've been very critical of the general manager. I know a lot of people were critical when he traded Dylan DeMello for a third-round pick, and then they saw Brendan Dillon get a second and a third-round pick. But it's just like, you got to remember, Brendan Dillon's played a bunch of playoff games, and Dylan DeMello hasn't. He also hasn't been proven in this league. He's playing for the Senators right now, and like, let's be honest, the Sens are one of the worst teams in the league. So how great can Dylan DeMello be? And that was just classic, Sens Twitter and Sens fans overvaluing the players that they have. So like I said, they've been pretty critical of Pierre Dorion, but so far today, it seems like they're actually kind of hopeful for the future, especially with this upcoming draft class. Everybody in Ottawa wants Lafreniere. We got potentially 2 opportunities to get that number 1 overall pick, thanks to San Jose and our pick. So there's a lot of optimism in Ottawa, but we just got to start turning it around. It's got to turn into I'm not saying immediately next year, obviously, because there's probably going to be another poor year next year. But like you said, 2023 to 2026, like that's going to be the time to start signing free agents and spending a little bit of money, because you got to start paying some people. Like you can't just have a roster full of people making $900,000. You need some actual NHL defensemen, forwards, and goalies. Anderson's probably on his way out at the end of the year. Maybe he gets a 1-year extension as a backup goalie. I can see that the team will probably end up rolling with Marcus Hoberg instead of Anders Nielsen. So it'll be interesting to see this offseason, what happens, especially around the draft. I'm excited for it. But overall, I think people in Ottawa are content and optimistic about what the Ottawa Senators are going to do at this year's NHL draft.
And to see all those draft picks come in today and throughout the day in the last couple of weeks and years, on top of that, the Belleville Senators are sitting in top 3 or 4 in the AHL right now. So there's obviously prospects already in the system, obviously more to come. And, I know the big tickets in the draft are Lafreniere and Byfield, but, there's going to be a lot of kids. It's a loaded draft class with a lot of talent, a lot of skill coming up. So it's kind of a perfect year for the Senators if they want to really add to that depth in the organization. I think with my concern with the Senators going forward, and I mean, they got Brady Tkachuk, they got Thomas Chabot, they got those 3 first-round picks coming up this season. I believe they'll have all 3 first-round picks this season. I can't see Lou Lamoriello, if he gets the 13th overall pick, not just saying to Ottawa, just take the pick. Or, if they make the playoffs, then he can't protect it at all, right? But I mean, loaded draft class with those guys. The main concern for me with the Senators, which you just kind of touched on a little bit, would be the goaltending situation. I mean, Craig Anderson's 40 years old. He's obviously going to be calling it quits here in a couple of years. I mean, you guys had high hopes for that O'Connor kid a couple of years ago in net. I mean, is goaltending your main concern? Like, who's the number 1 guy going forward for the future? And, if they don't get that guy, how concerning could that be, even though you have a lot of talent in front of you?
Honestly, it's not really that much of a concern for me, because going into the year, you're 100% right. Goaltending would have been my number 1 issue with this team. But watching Anders Nielsen play and Marcus Hoberg play has been honestly like a breath of fresh air. Hoberg's been really good. I know the team hasn't won a lot, but like they haven't won because Hoberg's letting a lot of goals. They've just won because the team doesn't play well and doesn't score a lot of goals. So like Hoberg would make like 50 saves in a game and the team would lose 3-2. It's just like he's standing on his head and he's making these incredible saves, but like he just doesn't have the team in front of him to compete with the teams that are coming at him. Anders Nielsen was always better before he got injured, was better than Craig Anderson this entire year. So he got a concussion. He's been out for quite some time now, and it'll be interesting to see how he does next year, because he was actually having a pretty good year as well. And then there's Philip Gustafsson, who has been kind of a disappointment, I would say, down in Belleville, just because he was a top-rated goalie prospect of his draft class. He was one of the top-rated goalie prospects going into last year, I believe. And he hasn't really fulfilled that level of hype just quite yet. I'm hoping he can turn it around and he can be the goalie of the future. If not, Ottawa's going to be looking for a goalie once again, which seems to be the case. I mean, Craig Anderson has been a staple in the net for the Ottawa Senators for a while, obviously. just got his 200th win as an Ottawa Senator. So, but like the Ottawa Senators haven't really done well with drafting goaltenders. It's just never been one of their strong suits. It's always been via trade or free agent signing.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll see what they got up their sleeve. Anything can change in the next few years, but I mean, Pierre Dorion, A+. You and I know him from baseball. We've played on the same roster as him. He's a good guy. He knows his stuff. Yep. He was a big component in the Senators drafting Erik Karlsson 10 years ago, and obviously that worked out very well for the Ottawa Senators. And I have full faith that Pierre Dorion, even with the trades that they have made, sending Erik Karlsson and Mike Hoffman and those guys from that 2017 team out of town, I have full confidence that he will be the general manager the next time the Ottawa Senators get to taste playoff hockey, and I think he'll continue to look to grow the organization in a tough market where, he hasn't maybe had the best support from ownership, and, a lot of guys maybe don't want to come play in Ottawa because it's not, you don't get the attention, you don't get, all the endorsements necessarily, but I think the team's heading in the right direction. They have the talent in Belleville to do it. They have the draft picks to do it. Like you said, free agency. And like I said, I think goaltending is going to be the key to this organization taking the next level. But I think they're off to a good start, and we'll see what happens this summer.
The Carolina Hurricanes actually just traded for defenseman Brady Shea from the New York Rangers for a first-round pick.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about this team. Right now, it's the other Ontario team who I am absolutely disgusted with as we head into this topic. But I'm actually going to kind of back off Kyle Dubas a little bit. They just signed Jake Muzzin to a 4-year extension at $5.625 million, which I am a big supporter of. Jake Muzzin has been a solid top 4 defenseman for the Leafs. He's been a leader through the tough times. I 110% support this signing, but I do not support Kyle Dubas standing pat today at the trade deadline and being comfortable with this group heading into the playoff run. The Leafs currently sit third in the Atlantic Division. They have 72 points. They're not going to move up to second or first. Boston and Tampa Bay are cruising right now, and I think there's too much of a gap to make up at this point. So I think right now they're looking at that third Atlantic spot or potentially a wild card position moving forward. I think hanging on to Tyson Barrie today, and I'm not really so mad at the Kapanen thing. A lot of people are saying Kapanen could be moved today. A lot of people are saying Kerfoot could have been moved today. Those guys are controllable. If you didn't get the right offer for those two guys, I can understand standing pat. But this team's, I said to Troy on Saturday, Troy and I did a podcast on Saturday, and I talked to Troy about the Carolina game on Saturday really being a key game for the Leafs, because I thought that was going to be a game that after the two games where they struggled against Buffalo and Pittsburgh, and then the complete 60-minute win over Pittsburgh 4-0 on Thursday, I thought the Carolina game was really going to be a key date for the Leafs as to what they were going to do heading into the trade deadline. And James Reimer goes down, who I love. I love James Reimer. I thought he was great for the Leafs for a lot of years. Then Peter Mrazek goes down. And what do? They call an AHL goaltender who is just a practice goalie and a reported Zamboni driver to come play in net. And the Leafs just get absolutely embarrassed on Saturday against the Carolina Hurricanes. And I woke up Sunday morning and I'm like, you know what? Get the assets for Tyson Barrie. Get whatever assets you can for some of these guys. And you know what? Third in the Atlantic. I mean, some people are saying like, oh, Montreal and Buffalo are trying to push for it and they want to get in. But I just don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth hanging on to Tyson Barrie, who's a UFA. I don't think it's worth, passing up on key assets. Like you see what the Sens got for Pajot today. Yep. You're telling me Toronto couldn't have got something good in return for Tyson Barrie, who's a proven top 4 defenseman in this league. Could have potentially signed an extension with a contender if they were able to pull that off. And I know that the extension, helped with the first round pick with Pajot, but you couldn't have got a couple seconds for Tyson Barrie. You couldn't have got like a second and a third for Tyson Barrie. And I feel like the Leafs in this playoff race without Tyson Barrie, because let's face it, he has not been, in my opinion, that great for the Leafs this season. I think he's been good, but I'm going to stop at good. I think he really hit his stride after Mike Babcock was let go. But I just think this is asset mismanagement from Kyle Dubas today. I really am shocked that after Saturday's game and after the Tuesday losses last week against Buffalo and Pittsburgh, that he looked at this roster and said, I'm content moving forward, going into the postseason where you're going to have to probably face Boston, or you're going to have to face Tampa, or if you're a wild card position, you're going to have to face Pittsburgh and Washington. I'm shocked he looked at that situation and said, I'm content with where I'm at and I'm going to go forward. And like James Van Riemsdyk, like Tyler Bozak, like Jake Gardiner, I could go on. Tyson Barrie's probably going to leave next year because of the cap, and they're not going to have anything in return to show for him. And I know what people are going to say, well, they were able to sign John Tavares with that cap space. Well, yeah, but you still could have probably got a first-round pick for James Van Riemsdyk. You probably could have got some assets for Bozak. You could have got assets probably for Gardner. Now we're going to let a fourth guy walk out of the back door with nothing in return to show for it. I'm shocked to see what I see today. I'm shocked they didn't make a move. I'm really disappointed Kyle Dubas was really content with this organization going forward.
Yeah, honestly, I absolutely love it. I mean, as a Sens fan, this dysfunctionality of the Toronto Maple Leafs always puts a smile on my face. But in all seriousness, I'm actually shocked as well that they didn't move on from Tyson Barrie. I know you say Jake Muzzin has been good for the Toronto Maple Leafs and a solid top 4 defenseman. I thought maybe depending on how this plays out, they might have traded him over Tyson Barrie, just for the potential return. But the extension of him does make sense. You need someone there to play with Morgan Rielly, and that can't go unnoticed as well. Like, Morgan Rielly has been injured, so it's just like that it plays a big part into the Leafs having some defensive troubles. But like you said, losing to a 42-year-old Zamboni driver is just inexcusable. Like, the Leafs looked like an emergency team. Like, the Carolina Hurricanes had an emergency backup goalie. The Leafs looked like an emergency team they had to bring in. It was ridiculous. They looked outmanned. They looked outmatched. They just got outgunned by the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Canes made them look silly. And it's just like, when you have Matthews, you have Tavares, you have Marner, you have Nylander. These guys should be able to, on their own, carry your team individually, let alone the 4 of them together. And the fact that they scored 2 goals on their first 3 shots, and then we're just like, we don't really want to throw shots on net anymore after that. We don't want to really try for this anymore. It's just ridiculous. I think Dubas not making any deals at the deadline here, I think that shows that he doesn't believe his team has what it takes to win. I think Toronto also has goaltending issues. I know they got Jack Campbell. I know they got Frederik Andersen. They just got rid of Hutchinson to Colorado for Callan Rosen, I think the guy's name is.
Yeah,
and
Calle Rosen. He was
Callan
here before.
Rosen. Yeah, Calle Rosen, who was here in Toronto before. Like, I don't think that solves any of your issues. I don't think Jack Campbell or Frederik Andersen is a solid option really right now. Neither of them have been playing really great. So the Leafs are in a hard spot here. Like, you got to really get on your guys. Like Austin Matthews, yeah, you might be in the 40 to 50 goal range this year, but like, you know, when are these key goals coming through? Like, I don't need to see Austin Matthews net the 6th goal in a 6-2 win over the Ottawa Senators. I need Austin Matthews to score the 3-2 goal against Pittsburgh in the last 5 minutes of the game or something like that. I need these clutch goals from these guys. Same goes for Marner and Tavares, and I just feel like I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing like they're winning the games they should win, and then when they get a little bit of adversity against teams that can actually compete with them, they just fold. And I don't know if that's a locker room thing. I don't know if that's just a player thing that they have in total. But it's kind of sad to see, just because there's a lot of talent there. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But as a hockey fan, it's just like, you want to see the best. You want to see the best go at the best with their A games, and we're just not seeing that from Toronto.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you on the Matthews aspect. I think Matthews has had a fantastic season. I think he's been playing really well. I think he scored a lot of key goals as well. Like, he's scored game-winning goals. He's scored in overtime. Like, they have gotten points. This is a team issue with me. I find, like, they have great players. Like, don't get me wrong. People are gonna call me crazy. Like, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, Nylander, Rielly. I can go on and on and on. They are good hockey players. I find, though, they don't play with heart. They don't play competitive. They don't play physical. And I mean, these aren't, like, Matthews is a big kid, but he's not a physical guy. Marner's not a big guy. They just play with, I find, like, half the time when they're down 3-1 in the third, they just show no heart and no passion to come back and win the hockey game. I'm not saying they have to win all those games, but it'd be nice to see them at least put up a fight in the last 5 minutes trying to win a hockey game. We've seen it against Boston. Boston's just bigger, stronger, faster, more physical in the corner, win puck battles, win races to the puck. Toronto, no matter who they play, it seems like, I mean, like you said, unless they're playing the Senators, unless they're playing the Red Wings, unless they're playing the Kings, those tear down teams that are playing for the draft, you just don't see the heart and the hustle from these players. Marner has about 60 points this season, and people are going to say, well, he's played really well. Yeah, well, I think there's a difference between a quiet 60 points and a guy who's put up 60 points, say, on the Boston Bruins in meaningful hockey games like you mentioned. I find Marner and Tavares have had quiet, good seasons, non-impactful, points are being put up on the boards. Like you said, like they're up 5-2 and Marner finds Tavares down the ice for, the empty net goal that just kind of seals it, right? And like you said, Riley's been hurt, and that's just kind of an unfortunate hit to their defense. Cody Cece's been hurt, which people are saying, well, that's hurt them too. I personally don't think it's hurt them at all.
It definitely has helped not hurt you.
Yeah, honestly, Timothy Liljegren coming up just filled that void in 5 seconds. It's Morgan Riley really hurt.
It's Morgan Riley.
When he skated today, which is a positive sign, but I mean, I'm just at a loss right now with this organization. I mean, you tore down, and I thought you tore down beautifully 3-4 years ago when you led to the Marner pick, you led to the Matthews pick. You got like William Nylander's contract looks really good this year. It looked awful last season. It has looked really good this season. I'm fully on board with William Nylander in the future of the Leafs. It's everything around them. Like, what do? Do you start trading, Kasperi Kapanen to get, a bigger, more physical player? Do you start like Nick Ritchie was just traded to the Bruins today? Should the Leafs have been in on a player like that to give them more size and grit? Do they trade Alex Kerfoot, who they got for Nazem Kadri in the offseason? Like, is Frederik Andersen just really a good goalie and nothing more and will not win in the postseason? Like, I don't know. Like, you fired Mike Babcock because the players wanted him gone. The players had wrote Mike Babcock off and they tuned him out and they were done with him. So the coaching change was made. You got the guy you wanted. And it's just more of the same results in late February and early March heading into the postseason that we've seen from this team and this organization forever. And I don't know what move they can make right now with the available players that are out there. And as the 3:00 trade deadline has just passed and they have not made a move, where do you think they go from here? Like, what does this organization need to do? Like, I've watched this team for 25 years, and for the first time in my life, I've thrown my hands in the air and I say, I don't know.
I am with you in that boat, man. I don't know. When you have Tavares, when you have Matthews, when you have Marner, when you have Nylander, when you have Morgan Riley, I know he's been injured, but you have those guys. This team should be a lot better than they are. Like, if you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, they've had Crosby and Malkin, and they've had Chris Letang, and they've had Marc-Andre Fleury. Now, I don't believe Marc-Andre Fleury was that great, but Crosby and Malkin, they're center one and center two. Crosby's a generational talent. I get that, but I feel like with Tavares, Matthews, and Marner, you can kind of equal like what Crosby and Malkin are, and Nylander's a bonus. And then you have Morgan Riley, who is just like the equivalent to Chris Letang. And it's just like, is like Frederik Andersen, he can't really step up. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the fact that they've invested so much into the four guys I mentioned in Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares. That they just really have no other money to fill out the rest of the roster, and that if those guys are off, no one else can really pick up the slack. And that brings me back to my original point. Now, I know you said that Matthews, you believe Matthews has had a great year, and obviously he has. He's got 43 goals. He's second in league goal scoring. I get that, but I'm sorry. Matthews to me is was the leader of that team. I know people can say Tavares is the future captain, but Matthews is the heart and soul of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the fact that he wasn't able to put the team on his back, I've seen Matthews go through the Ottawa Senators countless times. I saw Austin Matthews go through the 2017 Ottawa Senators and score 4 goals in his first game as a rookie. You're telling me Austin Matthews could not have done anything against a 42-year-old Zamboni driver in net? Give me a break. You need to be better than that. You need to put that team on your back. You need to be the guy. If it's not you, it's got to be Tavares. Tavares or Matthews, I put the entire blame of that game on those two guys alone myself. I know people might think I'm crazy for that, but when you're the guy on the team, you got to just say, screw it, give me the puck, I'm going by everybody, and I'm going to shoot this puck, because the whole team was putting up 0 effort. And that's when you need those guys to come in and make those plays. Marner is not that guy. Nylander is not that guy. It's Matthews and Tavares. And the fact that they didn't do anything, that's the core issue there, is it just seems like this team has no heart. And that's not something you can just have. That's not something you can just bring into the locker room. Like someone's not going to make some guy have heart. Like I just don't believe that. I feel like guys either have it or they don't. And a guy like Matthews, he'll light the league up, but it's just like he just won't. It's like if we're losing, it's like I don't want to try anymore. I just maybe it's not just him. Maybe it's more that maybe it's just a team thing completely. But I just really I feel like I see it with him more than anyone. Like in a game like that where it's like that was just embarrassing, especially where your team is just coming from after I know you beat Pittsburgh, but you lost them before, and then you lost to Buffalo before. It was just like bad losses, and there's like 3 out of 4 losses that you just had were really bad. Sorry,
to your point there, can I say something to your point there? Everything you just said about Matthews, I agree with, but I think you have the wrong name. Everything you just said about Matthews is my thoughts on John Tavares. Everything you just said, because Matthews is wearing an A. Matthews is a leader. But your captain, when you're losing 6-3 to Pittsburgh, to Carolina on Saturday, and you have the backup or the emergency goalie in net, they went over to the Leafs bench and showed the team sitting there. Sheldon Keefe is in disgust. And the players, the assistant coaches are just like sitting there shaking their heads, and they're like, I don't know what the hell just happened. John Tavares is in the middle of that bench with the C on his Toronto Maple Leafs jersey, and he wasn't saying a word to anybody. If that's me, if I'm Brendan Shanahan and I'm Kyle Dubas, that's the guy that I put the C on the jersey because I thought he was the leader. I thought he was the guy that everyone would turn to when things are going bad. And I thought he was going to be the guy that when things went wrong, he would stand in the way. He would deflect the criticism. He would protect the Kapanens, the Matthews, the Marners, and he would put the team on his back like you just said. I believe Matthews is Toronto's best player. Some people want to say Mitch Marner is. Well, I fully disagree. I think Austin Matthews is. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. I know Tavares is actually the captain. I was just saying I believe Matthews is the captain of this team. Like I know Tavares has the C. I think Austin Matthews being there obviously longer and just being the face of the franchise, in my opinion, is like the actual captain of the team. I just feel like they didn't give him the C because of that incident he had in Phoenix in the offseason. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm just like, I'm watching that game, and I even said to Troy, I'm like, how is Tavares just sitting there through this? Mm-hmm. Like, how is he not looking down this bench saying, boys, pull your heads out of your asses and let's go? Like, this is bullshit what we're doing. And he just sat there, didn't say a word. I see New York Islanders fans on Twitter all the time saying that they don't miss the part of Tavares' game where he just kind of sat there where things were going wrong and it just was what it was. I'm starting to see why New York Islanders fans partially were not actually as upset over time with Tavares leaving as they originally were, because I'm starting to see things in John Tavares where I am very, very disappointed, where I just don't see the captain I thought was going to be at the start of the season. Everything you just said about Austin Matthews, I'm not saying you're wrong. That's your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. But everything you just said about Austin Matthews, to me, is everything I believe John Tavares has done this season. He has not picked the team up. He has not, he just sits there in front of the media when things go wrong and with his head down, his hat's covering his eyes, and he's just answering as little as he can. I've been very disappointed with what I've seen from John Tavares this season. I believe Austin Matthews, I'm not saying he's the perfect player. I'm not saying he's been the best player in the league this season. I think he's had a really good year. I agree with some of the things you said, but everything you just said, to me, has been what John Tavares has been this season. And I agree. I think Austin Matthews is the face of the franchise. I think he's the franchise player. If one guy in this organization was untouchable, I believe it would be him. But Tavares is the guy where, I know what you said. Well, I think Austin Matthews is the captain without the C. Well, you're right. But John Tavares is actually wearing the C. And I don't think he has done anything nearly enough to pick this organization up through the bad times.